Hi, my name is Brian Mehaffyb, and I'll be presenting engineering ethics and mechanical engineering in the U.S. compared to Russia. The ASME, or American Society of Mechanical Engineers, was founded in 1880 at the height of the Industrial Revolution. The turning point in 1905 was a boiler explosion that killed 58 people and injured 117 others. This tragedy led to the stringent boiler laws that we know of today and inspired the Code of Ethics. Today, there are over 600 codes that have been established by the ASME. The ASME's Code of Engineering Ethics has three fundamental principles. One is using the knowledge and skill for the enhancement of the human welfare. Two, being honest and impartial and serving with fidelity the public, employers, and clients. And three, striving to increase the competence and prestige of the engineering profession. The purpose of these principles is to uphold and advance the integrity, honor, and dignity of the engineering profession. ASME's 7 fundamental canons are: engineers shall hold paramount the safety, health, and welfare of the public, perform services only in the areas of their competence, continue their professional development and the developments of others that they supervise. They shall show professionalism and avoid conflicts of interest, build their professional reputation on merit, associate only with reputable people and organizations, and issue public statements in an objective and truthful manner. Russia's Code of Ethics, also known as the Russian Code of APEC Engineering Professional Ethics, was founded in 2010 by the Russian Union of Scientific and Engineering Associations and the Association of Engineering Education of Russia. The three main categories of the APEC Code for Engineers are general provisions, basic principles of professional ethics, and key moral values. The general provisions defines major moral principles of creative work, upholds the highest standards of morals for the Russian APEC engineer. Honor and dignity are upheld by ensuring the welfare of the public and striving for innovation. Russian APEC engineers seek to enhance the existing engineering solutions and search for new ones. Part 1 of the basic principles of professional ethics, Section 2, are: be fair and faithful, avoid conflicts, provide moral incentives to colleagues, and handle fair criticism in a positive way, have an unbiased attitude towards all clients and colleagues, irrespective of their ethnicity, religion, age, and so on. Publish the outcomes of their work, as well as let subordinates and colleagues do so. So the Russian Code of Ethics Basic Principles, Part 2, Russian APEC engineers shall not undermine public trust or shatter professional reputations, shall not issue public statements without full factual information or injure the professional reputation of other Russian engineers. They will not use engineer products for commercial publicity or accept payment for services rendered without the consent of their employer, or use confidential information to obtain a profit, and they shall not take part in an engineering project that could result in the harm to society or the environment. Basic Principles Part 3, a professional engineer should continuously search for reliable facts and find and protect the truth, respect work of colleagues, critically assess his or her own work, consider all potential consequences to the society and the environment, be able to point out civil and ethical aspects of the problem, prepare for constructive dialogue with related industries, and enhance the reputation of the Russian APEC engineer. Section 3, Key Moral Values. The key moral values that apply to all APEC engineers are teamwork, cooperation, humanism, efficiency, integrity, and persistence. aspirations for continued professional development, outreach activity to fight against ignorance and incompetence, disciplined behavior, and responsibility for assumed obligations. The first engineering case failure for the United States that I'll cover is the Ford Pinto. The Ford Pinto was released in 1968 and it had a critical design flaw. The gas tank was vulnerable of being compressed and punctured during a rear-end collision, possibly causing injury to the occupants through either a fire or explosion. Ford Motor Company's response was to continue production in spite of the flaw and decided that it was cheaper to pay the medical bills and insurance claims rather than redesign and retrofit the field of population of the Ford Pinto. Many engineers felt that the fuel tank was unsafe, but their concerns were unheard and ignored by upper management. The consequences were 180 deaths as a result of the fuel tank design flaw, leading to leaks and fires and explosion. The outcome was Ford was brought to court and fined. Pinto ceased production, and it costed Ford large profits. So the second case study failure for the United States is the Challenger explosion in 1986. This wasn't actually a design flaw. The O-ring was not designed to operate in the extreme cold, which was the case in January 28, 1986, when the launch was planned. Despite repeated concerns and warnings, NASA and the federal government ignored those warnings because of the launch deadline and the visibility of this. They launched anyways, and the consequences were that the space shuttle exploded 73 seconds after takeoff, killing all crew members. An engineering case failure in Russia was the Chernobyl incident in 1986. The design flaw here was a poorly designed experiment on Chernobyl's reactors, which was conducted by unqualified engineers. Initially, the Soviets tried to cover this up, but when the exposure was too widespread, they admitted to it and then took actions to try to limit the exposure and radiation that was contaminating the area. The engineers lacked the proper knowledge and failed to follow proper safety procedures. Consequences were initially 32 deaths, but eventually over 1,000 deaths were contributed to radiation exposure and illnesses such as cancer or the effects on livestock and the environment. The second case failure in Russia is the Siano hydroelectric incident in 2009. The design flaw was the seals on the turbine shaft were prone to cracks. The company felt it was too expensive to replace turbine 2 and instead constantly repaired it. And the engineers had expressed that the turbine should be replaced, but their communications were ignored. Eventually, the rotor separated from the turbine and spun out of control, killing 50 people and destroying a part of the plant. So this is a comparison of the United States and the Russian code of ethics. They're very similar. I won't go through them, but the basic principles are that to uphold the integrity and honesty of the engineering profession, to protect the safety and well-being of the public, to further enhance and inspire advancements in innovation and technology, and to reduce failures and exposure to the public. Some final thoughts. Engineers have a strong responsibility to uphold the code of ethics in all circumstances. Engineers have a responsibility to study and learn from past engineering failures and their consequences, to find ways to progress their innovations forward responsibly and ethically without repeating the mistakes of the past. In this age of globalization, it is essential for engineers to work together locally, nationally, and internationally to uphold honesty, integrity, and compassion for human welfare within their profession. Thank you.